why should companies like SAP and IBM and PepsiCo care about addressing these challenges? Why should they care about engaging their employees in addressing these challenges? Well, for a couple of good business reasons, but not the least of which because their employees demand it, because their business needs demand it as they work in an increasingly complex global marketplace. There was a Towers-Watson study in 2012 that studied 32,000 employees across sectors, and it found that only 1/3 of those employees were highly engaged in their jobs. At the same time, PwC undertook a study, their annual CEO study, so this was their 15th annual CEO survey, and what they found was that 1/4 of those CEOs said that they had to put a strategic initiative on hold or cancel it altogether because of talent constraints. So you can see that as companies look to thrive and innovate, it's extremely important for them to have engaged employees. As companies look to be more successful in emerging and frontier markets, they have to have a globally fluent workforce. PepsiCo, the SAP Social Sabbatical Program, and IBM's Corporate Service Corps and Executive Service Corps program are giving these companies the opportunity to draw on talent pools that are globally fluent and on employees that are highly engaged in the work the company is doing. So I'm going to give each of the panelists a chance to tell us specifically how these programs work and how they are benefiting their companies and how they are also benefiting society in parallel. And if I can start with a question that will go to all three of you about what are the skills you're seeing in the employees that you're sending out to participate in these programs. And I'll start with Saswato Das from SAP. Saswato was a former participant in the Social Sabbatical Program. He is now the Director for Global Thought Leadership Content for the company. And SAP started their program only a couple of years ago, but they already doubled the program in 2012. And they have teams right now in India, Brazil, South Africa, and China. So 4 teams on the ground in parallel right now. He should have a lot to share with us.
Thank you. So the main thing that we saw that our employees wanted was to do something different, yet something meaningful for their education. And we started off this program as a pilot, and the pilot was open to all high potentials within SAP. So these are the people, the human resources, and the managers think will be the future leaders of the company. And the feedback we have from these people is this is just a wonderful program. Some people who participated call it their best experience in their career. And typically what happens is these small teams go to locations that are important to us. So our big markets like India, Brazil, China, South Africa, and they spend in small teams, they work with the nonprofit. And I was in Pretoria in South Africa last year. I was working with a nonprofit that worked with the disabled. So South Africa had a relatively new constitution, and they have protections for the disabled. So there is this outfit called Employment Solutions for the Disabled in Pretoria, which tries to hire people who cannot otherwise work and give them meaningful employment. So if you see, let's say, a Nissan or an Audi, some of the seats, leather seats, are sewn by these people. Gear knobs are made by them. Disabled people can do this repetitive work, and they love it. The company or the nonprofit was started by a social worker who had a big heart, but didn't really run it like a business. So our job, the 3 of us, and incidentally, we were from 3 different continents, all working for SAP, working in a 4th continent, Africa. Our job was to sort of give them some of our perspective and they found that very helpful because we could, do a cost-benefit analysis. We could do things and teach them some of the ways how to do business in a way that a big corporation has done. What we saw and what I found very impressive was that this nonprofit actually hired world-class people. The managers were world-class. They could have made 3 times that amount of money they were getting on the open market, working for a corporation, yet they chose to stay at this organization. And the way the head of the organization motivated the employees, she gave them a sense of purpose every single day. And this is what made the difference. All of us who came back learned a valuable lesson in motivation. How do you motivate people in tough times, in a depressed economy when bonuses and pay raises aren't that good? And you also saw that you don't have to do things in one particular way. There are other ways, scrappy ways that make it happen.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask the same question to Stan Litow. Stan is the VP for Corporate Citizenship at IBM and also the president of the IBM Foundation. And first of all, congratulations. It's the 5-year anniversary this year of the Corporate Service Corps program. And IBM, through Corporate Service Corps and Executive Service Corps, has sent over 2,400 employees on month-long assignments abroad to more than 30 countries already. And certainly IBM has been a leader in this area of purposeful global engagement, not only in what they're doing with the Corporate Service Corps and Executive Service Corps, but throughout the corporate citizenship function. So what skills have you seen your people bring back from the corporate service program?
Well, let's start off with the fact that this program is not about corporate philanthropy, and it's not about corporate citizenship alone. It's a marriage between the important business strategy of the company and through corporate citizenship programs in an integrated way. And 5 years ago, this started because our CEO was talking about the transformation of the company to become a globally integrated enterprise. The model for great global companies had changed. You weren't going to be segmented. You're going to force your people to be able to work in global teams in an integrated kind of way, learning a lot of important skills about cultural adaptability, teaming skills, the ability to understand growth markets in a meaningful way, and all of the old models about leadership development, skills training, executive education needed to be rethought. And the Corporate Service Corps was the centerpiece in being able to design a scalable and sustainable program that would train your emerging leaders with the skills that they needed to be effective for the company in the 21st century. So people apply. In order to be selected for this program, you've got to be a high performer, you've got to be an emerging leader within the company, and the selection process is more competitive than applying into one of the most selective universities in the United States or around the world. And the 500 people who are selected are, from our standpoint, the best of the best. And then we send them out in teams. About 800 teams have worked over the last 5 years, and as Deirdre said, in over 35 different countries. The kinds of things that they've done is create a new healthcare program in Cross River Province in Nigeria, develop an integrated program for small and medium-sized businesses to grow in Turkey, ways to be able to bring your skills together to solve a critical problem. And the teams are composed of IBM leaders from around the world in over 50 different countries with a whole range of skills going in. So it's typical to have a team have somebody who's a strong researcher, somebody who's a good consultant, somebody who has a legal expertise or a finance expertise or a marketing or a communications expertise. They have a good deal of time pre-work to be able to refine their objectives so that they hit the ground running. Then 3 weeks to 4 weeks on the ground working 24/7 as a team, and then they come back and during the debriefing maybe mentor the next team that goes in. So if you look at the skills that people acquire, they're the skills that the company values. Teaming skills, cultural adaptability skills, the ability to listen to people who have different sort of cultural values or language issues around the world. And it's an opportunity for the company to actually engage and open new markets in communities around the world where you're looking to do business, but based upon the skills, the relationships, and the product that they develop, you're building a cadre of leaders in the company that could really take you to the next level. And in the evaluation that we've done of the program, people point to it as the most successful executive education or leadership development program that they've ever experienced, not just at IBM, but in their lives. They were asked, to what degree did this improve the likelihood that you would complete your career at IBM? 100% said it would significantly increase the likelihood of them completing their career at IBM. And if you know your top performers, those are the people that your competitors are consistently sort of going after. So I would say that it is incredibly successful within the company. It's achieved its goals, and now many of our clients are coming to us with their interest in participating in this program, and we allow them the opportunity to be integrated into the IBM teams as they go out. And very often it's an opportunity for them to see whether or not this is a program that would work for them. So, you know, it started off as something that was integrated into the business strategy. It started off as a project that would have very, very specific measurable goals, and it hit all of them. And I can't imagine, as we've now gone through from CEO to CEO leader, it's something that has enormous amount of support from senior leadership in the company and enormous amount of support from the board. And it also attracts an enormous amount of media attention for the company. So it's win-win.
Thank you. So the PepsiCo program is also very integrated in the business and specifically integrated into the Performance with Purpose platform at PepsiCo, which is very close to our hearts with purposeful global engagement. A lot of parallels there. But Charlene Denisard is the director for community involvement, community engagement, and corporate volunteering, and she's going to share a few words with us also about the skills that you've seen developed at Pepsi.
Yeah, and just to talk a little bit about what Performance with Purpose is, I mean, it really is our anchor as a corporation. So it has 3 pillars. It has a human sustainability. It's about delivering sustained value for consumers. And so this is about our products, about having fun-for-you treats, but also healthy products as well. Our environmental sustainability plank, which is against doing business in an environmentally sustainable way and reducing costs. And the third is talent sustainability, which is about creating a diverse and inclusive environment for our employees. And the way our program actually came about, I mean, we've learned a lot from the IBM program, actually, but ours was more of a grassroots effort. We had a group of employees who were having a roundtable with our CEO, and they said, you know, we love Performance with Purpose, but I don't really feel it. I mean, I don't really know what it means to me personally. And she said, as she's known to do, she turned the tables and said, well, you're leaders, come to me with an idea. Tell me how you want to make this personal. And they came to them with this idea of PepsiCo, about this International Corporate Volunteering Program. And they went and they pitched it, they got the funding for it, and the program started 3 years ago. And it really is a way for us to make Performance with Purpose really personal for people. And I have actually a little story to tell, a recent example. One of the guys, his name is Michael Russell, he went on the program to Ghana the first year. And he said, you know, I thought I was a great listener. You know, I'm a sensitive guy. My wife tells me what to do. I listen. You know, I'm a listener. And he went on this trip, and he was having, with his team of 8, a meeting with one of the chiefs. And they all sat down. They had this meeting. They talked about what the needs were of the village. They went back to their guest house to have a conversation about it, and they realized they all heard something different. And he just said, you know what, I thought I was a great listener, but I realized I'm jumping to the conclusion before I've really listened and understood the problem. So a very recent example of how he's kind of taken this to heart is he was in a meeting with his customer, who's Costco, and they told him, well, we really want to have a bruschetta Stacy's pita chip. And he thought, great, we have that. We're going to sell those. And he said, but wait a minute, let me just take a step back and let me understand what your customer is really looking for. And it turned out they were looking for more of an artisanal bread type of product. So he went back to R&D. They created this crostini pita chip, which is actually going to launch in 2 weeks in the Northeast. You'll see it in Costco stores, and he's already got $1 million in orders. So he came back to me, he told me the story. He said, you know what, if I really hadn't taken a look at something I thought I was really good at as a leader and realized I really could take it to the next level, I wouldn't be enjoying the success in the business. So It's a way to really make that personal connection into what you're doing day to day in your job.
Well, that's great. I actually want to ask a follow-on specifically because you brought up Ghana and working with traditional leaders. So what are the most important considerations when you're sending a team out? They're going to work with such varied audiences, traditional leaders in Ghana, rural farmers in Rajasthan, India. What do you take into account as you select and prepare these teams to go?
Yeah, I mean, it's really the two things that you just brought up. One is the preparation, which is the pre-work. So our pre-work is pretty robust. In fact, one of the great things about working with PYXERA Global is the fact that you've been very flexible with us. We have special needs and special things that we're trying to accomplish with our program, which may be nuanced differences from what IBM or SAP are trying to do. So for us, I mean, we train them in everything from social media training to medical preparation. We want them to be comfortable on the ground. The other thing that is a bit different about our program is that we insist that it's rural. So a lot of the other companies will do things in an urban environment, and we really want to take people out of their comfort zone. So we need to be sure that we're selecting people who are going to be comfortable being out of their comfort zone, because if they're out of country for a month and they're miserable, they're not going to be very productive. So the selection process is for the personal comfort, but also for employees who really can be flexible. They can flex their style. You know, the PepsiCo employee tends to be very driven, very type A, and very used to operating around people who also are that way. But what they find if they're working for a nonprofit in a country where things don't necessarily move so fast, you could end up with some very frustrated employees and also an unhappy nonprofit customer. So, you know, we screen for all those things ahead of time.
Well, I saw a lot of nodding from our other guests as you were talking about some of those considerations and things. Do either of you want to add on to how you consider who goes and how they're prepared?
Well, we have a very competitive process for applications. We'll get anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 applicants a year, and we're selecting the 500 top people. So it's very, very competitive to find those 500 people a year. We look to mix geographically and also to mix people skill-wise, because from a commercial standpoint, if you were doing a commercial consulting assignment, you'd have the smallest number of people with just the right skills. You wouldn't think about adding skill levels that might take you to the next level, because you probably wouldn't pay for that in your engagement. But the Corporate Service Corps really prides itself on finding people with the mix of skills coming from a mix of countries and a mix of geographies, so that the maximum benefit that they get in terms of problem solving is having all the skills necessary, not just to meet the project that they've been assigned to do, but things that they could do to take it to the next level. Now, the idea of rural versus urban, we have two different elements to this program. We do send people out to work with NGOs in teams, but we also have a Smarter Cities Challenge approach, where we specifically send out teams of people to work with mayors and city leaders around the world. We've done about 100 of those cities over the last 3 years, with teams of 6 people going to every one of those cities, about 600 people. And what they have been able to achieve is find ways to make the city smarter, a transportation plan or strategy in Nairobi, a way to address the food and food safety issues in Vietnam, or the water quality issues in Da Nang, and to be able to also learn a lot about how cities, especially in the developing world, operate, so that the skills that they've gotten not only are around service and the idea of being able to build a team-based approach to solving a problem, but also to understand specifically how you make cities smarter. And that's the intersection between IBM's goal to build effective leaders, but also to create opportunity for the company by working in collaboration with cities around the world. And actually, yesterday we announced the second phase of the Smarter Cities Challenge, where we're going to, over the next 3 years, intensify our operation working with cities around the world. New mayors coming up with new financing options, and really finding ways to be able to not just work with cities individually, but in a regional approach to solve critical problems.
SAP's approach is very similar to IBM's and to some degree PepsiCo's. The one thing we try to do is we try to make sure that people are outside their comfort zone. And we pair them up, or we put them in teams with people from different backgrounds, different skills, not like a consulting arrangement, but otherwise, so that they can mix and learn. And we also make sure that they're all housed together so that every evening over dinner they can have exchanges and learn from each other. And PYXERA Global was very helpful in sort of organizing all of these and finding the right fits.
So Sato, I want to come back to you. You said when you first spoke that so many people had said this was the best experience of their careers and their best experience at SAP. Last year, GWU did a study, a cost-benefit analysis of international corporate volunteer programs versus some more traditional, I guess, classroom-based leadership development programs. Presumably, you've participated in both, and you have a lot of colleagues that have participated in both. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found of one versus the other?
So a classroom experience, while valuable, is something that I would guess everyone in this room is comfortable with and aware of. This is really different. It puts you in a completely different situation, and no matter how much you prepare for it, and there was a lot of pre-work, when you actually are on the ground, it's very different. And it's like learning a language in total immersion, as all of us who have learned a foreign language know. Once you're there on the ground in a total immersion situation, you learn very quickly and you learn very well, and it's completely different from language training outside. So that's how I would compare it. And if you look at the dollars spent, I think that's also very good. These tend to be less expensive than traditional executive education.
Did you want to add anything to that, Sam?
Yeah, I agree that, first of all, it's a very cost-effective program. I think if you sort of look at other executive education or leadership programs, they cost a lot more money because you're spending a lot of the resources to cover the program through your philanthropic resources. You're getting a tax advantage on it as well. And in terms of the actual link to your skills development, you have a lot more control over the program as opposed to just buying seats in an existing executive education program. And in terms of the excitement of the people who've been through the program, I will tell you it's now almost 2,500 people who have been through this over a 5-year period. They're not only have built their skills, but they continue to work together online all the time. They're a resource to one another. If you sort of look at a company and your ability to understand growth markets that you might be interested in the future, imagine what kind of premium would you place on having 300 or 400 people who worked on the ground in a variety of those countries, and they understand the dynamic between the public sector and the voluntary sector. They understand the infrastructure needs, and they're able to enrich the company in a long way. I always call it a triple benefit program. For the individual participant, it's the best leadership program of their lives. For the people on the ground, they're getting access to things that they would never be able to get if you were involved in checkbook philanthropy. And from the company's standpoint, you're building a continuing value to the company that makes it a sustainable program.
Great. Charlene, you talked about some of the benefit that came back. It was a great story about one of your participants. What about, putting you on the spot here now, but what about some of the stories you've heard of what's happened on the ground and the social impact of your programs? Are there things you're particularly proud of, or that any of you are particularly proud of, that have come out of the work on the ground?
Well, for us, when I was talking about performance with purpose before and the 3 pillars upon which those rest, we actually have strategic imperatives underneath each one of those. So for human sustainability, it's healthy lifestyles and affordable nutrition. Under environmental sustainability, it's access to clean, safe water and sustainable agriculture. And on human sustainability, it's enabling job readiness, which is really about helping students get into college. And empowering women and girls. So we actually have specific goals that we're trying to achieve, and we use this program to achieve those goals. So, for example, the India project, which I was fortunate enough to be a participant in, we were focused on clean, safe water. So we were able to, along with all the other goals that PepsiCo has set for itself, 6 million people having access to clean, safe water around the world, we're achieving those and also using the PepsiCo program to achieve that as well. But also, we work with our subject matter experts within PepsiCo, and we're able to give them some on-the-ground information about, say, how a villager in rural Rajasthan is using their water and what their challenges are to kind of help them work with the Water.org and some of the bigger grant programs that we're doing as well. So I think what's nice about our program is that it's housed within our global citizenship, which also houses our foundation, and we're really trying to marry up our volunteering work with our grant work and kind of keeping it, driving forward towards all those goals we have on our strategic imperatives.
So Sweta, I hope it's something you're particularly proud of that the program has achieved.
I'll start with my personal experience, because this NGO that we were working with, they were in a really bad state. They were actually, this is Business 101, they were charging less for goods, for services rendered, than it was costing them to produce it. And so they were very close to shutting down when we arrived. And so we were able to sort of do this cost-benefit analysis and show them a path to stay on. And so even last week, the president of that NGO sent me her marketing plan. So we are still in touch. So I don't know if we saved them for the long term. That remains to be seen. But we have really helped them tide over some very, very difficult times. This story is not unusual. Almost everyone who participated, and I don't know if it was how you chose the NGOs, but many of them seem to have embraced the volunteer as the last chance, or something that to solve a problem. We were sort of the McKinseys of the world who came in and tried to help them when nothing else worked. I think for the most part, and I should say our program is still new, it's in its second year, it seemed to work, because this sort of cross-pollination or this intersection of different skills really sparked new ideas.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we've had, as I mentioned, a team that worked in Nigeria to create the infrastructure to implement a free healthcare program for poor women and children across a province in Nigeria that became a model for healthcare program. They had a lot of ideas, but the IBM team had the management expertise to bring it to reality. We sent a team in to Kenya, into Nairobi. They developed a transportation strategy for the city, which attracted about $325 million worth of investment from the World Bank. Those are two examples. And the work that we've done in cities has been so successful that we expanded it to include cities not only in growth markets, but in major markets. And we sent a team into Townsville in Australia after natural disasters, and they had a lot of investment from the national government, but they needed a strategy and plan to make it work in the most effective kind of way. And it incorporated a variety of different infrastructure and rebuilding programs and clean water and a permanent sort of strategy to deal with natural disasters. And I think that gets back to this value that you produce on the ground with these teams, things that local NGOs or local government, absent the kind of skills that you're offering, then they would never, ever be able to do on their own. And that's why I talk about the triple benefit. It's, yes, we get the best emerging leaders, we get improved retention of your top talent, but what you're actually creating is a huge amount of economic benefit and value on the ground.
So delivering a lot of social value. And let's talk a little bit, a couple of you touched on this along the way about how these programs have actually driven new business for your companies. Would any of you like to provide an example of how that's happened and what the reaction has been on the business side to knowing that this type of program can actually bring in new business?
Well, first of all, you have to be careful that you're not doing anything in terms of the allocation of these teams as part of a quid pro quo. But if it turns out that their experience on the ground with the company employees and your ability to solve problems has so been advanced by this effort, that yes, you do wind up getting business opportunity as a result of it, whether it's the transportation plan that I talked about in Nairobi, the project in Nigeria. Both of them, in Nigeria, it was our first large-scale services contract in the country of Nigeria. So we have gotten an enormous amount of business benefit to the company as a result of it. And we've entered markets that, normally when you think about your citizenship activities or your philanthropic activities, you wait until you have feet on the ground and you have clients, and then you start thinking about what you can do from a citizenship standpoint. This reverses the strategy. It starts off with entering a market through your citizenship programs, and then it leads to further business investment and commercial benefit.
Yeah, I would say that, again, our program is new and maybe we didn't have a direct bottom line benefit, but we had tremendous amount of goodwill. One of our colleagues was in Pretoria and he tweeted his experience, and the city of Pretoria started following him and tweeted it out again. So of course, suddenly everyone who's on social media in Pretoria is learning about SAP. And it so happens that SAP also runs some of Pretoria's government ERP systems. But again, this goodwill, this knowledge, which we found a lot of when we were there, was overwhelming. The other thing I'd like to mention is it's a great recruitment tool, because if you want to recruit millennials, the generation that's coming into work today, when we go on recruitment fairs, people are always asking us about what are we doing in the corporate social responsibility arena. And this, people's eyes light up when they hear of this, because it's something different. And sure, many big companies are doing it, but it's not the norm by any means.
Charlene, since we're running a little bit short of time, any tips you'd like to give to anyone in the audience who might consider a program like PepsiCo for their companies?
Tips. Well, I think for us, the way that we pitched the program and kind of conceived it originally was really helpful now 3 years down the road, because we had buy-in at the very high levels very early on, and there was a lot of excitement. And I think we had an employee base who were really willing to work on it. So we had actually 8 people working on our program just part-time for the first 2 years, and they were sort of doing this in addition to their day jobs. But they were so committed to it. So I think buy-in at the top levels early on is really important. And I think having a great partner like PYXERA Global is wonderful for us. I mean, I'm not doing this as a shameless pitch, but I really need it because, now that I'm running the program, I just know I couldn't do it on my own. So leveraging experiences, one of the other great things that we have is this Icp Council, which is where different members or different people who run their programs at other companies, so SAP is a member and so is IBM, we get together quarterly to talk among ourselves and learn from each other. So getting engaged with other corporate partners, there's always this willingness to share. It's a huge white space, so there's room for everybody. So I would say that'd be another great thing, is just to get to conferences like this and getting to know other companies and reaching out.
And a last question for you, Stan, is where do you see this field of, whether you call it international corporate volunteerism or cross-border corporate service, where do you see this going, and how can everyone in this room become engaged?
Well, I'll start off with the fact that my boss, our CEO, Ginny Rometty, meets with other CEOs all the time. And this comes up in the conversation very, very often. People are looking for an opportunity to build your skill levels, take it to the highest level, open up growth markets, change the perception of your company, and they are intrigued by the opportunity to participate in a program like this. And she very often will end the conversation by offering them, if you're interested in being part of this program, we can give you the geographies that we're going to be in over the next year. Pick the geography, pick the type of project, become integrated into an IBM team. You don't have to, put a lot of resources into the development of it. And then if it works out, you can take it to the next level. So just imagine if instead of a few Fortune 500 companies or even mid-sized companies, all Fortune 500 companies did something like this. You don't have to do 500 a year. It could be something that is focused in a particular kind of way on certain geographies or certain types of people. But imagine the impact that we could have around the world, not only in building skills and talent within our companies, which is the definer in terms of setting yourself away from other competitors, but also changing the dynamic around the world about how people think about companies and what companies can do. changing the relationships that you have with local government on the ground. I think it could be a huge, huge issue. U.S. State Department used to call it citizen diplomacy, the way to engage by having people see people on the ground who are really just helping solve problems and using their skills to be able to do that. The last thing I would say is it's not volunteerism. You know, really, I mean, that's a name that we sort of call it because people are always looking for labels, but this isn't something that people are doing necessarily on their own time. We have a lot of programs where we use people to make best use of their time on their own, but this is something that the company is engaging in as a very strategic investment.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for a terrific discussion. And
Thank you,
we're
Deirdre.
right on time.
Yeah.